Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Force of Chaos. So if you don't know what this is, it's a novel written by Diana Ma, and the best way to describe it is that it's an alternate retelling of how the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers came together, but it's through the perspective of Trini. And when this book was first announced, like last year, I wasn't really that interested. I was thinking, okay, we've got a Power Rangers novel targeted for like young adults and stuff like that. We'll see what happens. And I really had no intentions of like picking this up. And then I heard people talking about it, saying that it was pretty good from what they've read with a couple of pages and a couple of chapters in. And I bought it because I won some kind of voucher at work, so I thought, well, I've got a $250 voucher, I might as well get it because, you know, it's a voucher I'm not using like money, and what I ended up getting was like the first Transformers hardcover for the Skybound verse, the third book of Mighty Morphin / Power Rangers, and of course this book here. And I started reading through it. And I just kept reading, and I just kept reading, and I just kept reading because I was so enamored and immersed within the storytelling of this book. Now, I need to address two things right now. One, there's going to be spoilers. Two, I have not finished reading this book. I am 20 chapters into this book, 150 plus pages or so into it. I have not finished reading it. I think this book is like 300 and something pages long, so I'm halfway there from what I know of. But I want to talk about it now. I want to make a video or a video rambling on about it where I talk into the mic, giving my thoughts on it, because this book is probably like the best alternate retelling of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This is probably one of the best iterations, in my opinion, we've had of these characters aside from the comics, because this is through the perspective of Trini, but the team doesn't come together right away. I mean, for the first like 15 or so issues or chapters, they're at each other's throats. They don't see eye to eye. And only just right now, as I'm reading the book, is they're slowly coming around and learning to work together. And there are deep cuts in this book that caught me off guard and took me by surprise. The first thing is the Salad Girl incident that was like brought up in Go-Go Power Rangers. So if you don't know, if you haven't read Go-Go Power Rangers, Zach used to work this job as a waiter. There was an incident with Kimberly's parents, and Zach got fired from the job, and he sort of calls Kimberly Salad Girl and holds some kind of like small grudge against her. And that was brought up in the comics, or that was brought up in the book from the comics, and that took me by surprise because I was like, that's a very deep cut, especially from early on in Ryan's run. And then later on in the book, you have this scene where Trini is talking to Zordon, and Zordon brings up Zolfram. Now, if you don't know who Zolfram is in the Power Ranger comics, spoilers for that as well, Zolfram is an Altarian soldier in the comics that later goes on to be Lord Zed. I've made videos talking about it. I'll probably leave a link in it down below. And that took me by surprise as well. Now, from what I've heard through certain friends in the community and people online, is that Lady Fianna gets brought up as well, and that's another deep cut from the comics. So it looks like that the author probably read a lot of Ryan's run in the comics to sort of understand the backstory for a lot of these characters. And I feel like that's a pretty good like source of resource to sort of pull all these deep cuts. Now, this book is through the perspective of Trini. It's mostly narrated by Trini. You have Trini's point of view for a lot of things, and you sort of deal with Trini's subconscious or her conscience as well within this book. One of the things that she does sort of have fears of is sort of how she's viewed as being Asian and how other students look at her because, you know, she's had some racist remarks thrown at her, or she doesn't want to get viewed as an Asian stereotype who knows Kung Fu and stuff like that. And that's one of the dilemmas she like faces. And there is a moment in the comic, in the book, where when all the Rangers get their powers, it is brought up that Zach is the Black Ranger and Trini is the Yellow Ranger, which, you know, was brought up again later this year due to that documentary, and it's brought up in this comic. And you have this scene where Zack embraces it, but Trini is kind of nervous about it, but she learns to embrace it later down the line. So I kind of like that moment. I was wondering where they were going to go with it when I was reading, but Trini learns to embrace herself as the Yellow Ranger because, she was worried about seeing viewed as a stereotype, so that the stigma of the casting had for so many years on Power Rangers. Well, it wasn't much of a stigma. I think it was brought up in recent times and stuff like that, but you get to see the character's perspective on it being brought up in the book. And I feel like that's an interesting note because, it's never brought up in the show, but they bring it up in the book and you kind of learn what the character's sort of point of view of that is. And again, I feel like Diana handled that really well when it came to Trini and Zack dealing with their suit covers. I feel like she navigated it really well because you have this scene, like I brought up, that Trini is hesitant to open up and show her martial arts background because, the symptom of racist bullying that she's experienced in the past, being Asian and knowing Kung Fu. And not only that, like I said, you have this scene where she learns to sort of embrace her being the Yellow Ranger. And I feel like she handled it really freaking well within this book. I mean, like they could have danced around it, but I feel like she handled it in a really interesting way. But I really do like the character interactions between everyone in this book because, within the first 15 or so chapters, you have Jason and Zack bumping heads, and you do learn that Zack had to walk away from being a football player because his mum had cancer, and he had sort of this weird grudge against Jason because, Jason never acknowledged it or never checked on him. But then again, they reconcile and they sort of hug it out and they sort of confide in each other. It's a really cool moment. Then again, there's other interactions that you kind of notice and you just nod your head at, there's this scene before they even get their powers, Kimberly and Trini are training in the command center, and Trini gives the suggestion to Kimberly by saying, hey, you're a gymnast, you're into gymnastics. You should focus on your lower body strength instead of your upper body strength, and that will probably help you out in fights. And I really do like that moment as well. And again, you don't really see the Rangers morph until you're 15 issues into 15 chapters-ish into the book because, their hands are tied and they have to morph in the end. And then you have that sort of inner monologue of how Trini feels when she's fighting and stuff like that, or even when the Rangers get their weapons because you have the scene where they put their hands in and their weapons reform and Trini gets these two sort of saber-tooth daggers, but it's also based on these needles that she would train with her Nai, her grandmother, I believe. So we get that backstory as well. So I feel like the writer did a really good job at sort of diving into this alternate retelling of how the Mighty Morphin team come together. And that is one thing I want to praise about with this book because it is the best alternate retelling of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And I know everyone's grunts and moans when people say, oh, not Mighty Morphin again. They need to move away from Mighty Morphin, this, and that. But this is the best iteration of these characters since the comic, in my opinion. And I love the Power Ranger comics. If you're a regular on the channel, I love the Power Ranger comics and the writing that those characters got. But having a comic having a book through the perspective of Trini's eyes and point of view and sort of how she views the world around her and how people think of her and stuff like that and sort of that self-doubt that she has, it's such an interesting read, and I do wonder how the book is going to end because, I haven't even got up to when they formed the Megazord yet, and I just want to finish this book. I know I should have waited to finish reading it to give a review, but like I said, I want to talk about it, and I feel like you should definitely read this book and pick it up for yourself, whether you get a digital copy or get it on special. I believe it's on special on Amazon right now as of the time of recording this video. But if you're a fan of Power Rangers and you want a different take on Mighty Morphin, this is probably the best take you're going to get on Mighty Morphin in recent years. So I highly recommend checking it out and giving it a read. So with that said, I think I'll bring this video to a close. Go read Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Force of Chaos and check it out. I'm enjoying it. I'm definitely enjoying it, and I highly recommend checking it out for you guys as well. And if you have read it, tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear them. And with that said, I will catch you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye.